Okay, let's dive right into this. You know, when you hear the word pirate, your brain probably goes straight to wooden galleons, eye patches, and maybe some buried treasure, right? We'll completely erase that image. Today's maritime piracy is this high-stakes, incredibly organized, almost cinematic game of cat and mouse, and it's playing out right now across the bright open ocean. So in this explainer, we're going to look at exactly how the global community built a massive, international legal dragnet to actually catch them.
Just picture this scene. Night falls on the Straits of Malacca. You've got this massive cargo ship underway, cutting through the dark water. And suddenly, a fast motorized boat zips up to the ship's stern. It's the closest point to the crew, but it is the absolute best spot to board totally undetected. See, this isn't some Hollywood action movie. This is the very real, very intense reality of modern maritime attacks. We really have to strip away those old wooden ship tropes.
Because when you look at what these guys are actually using, it's wild. They're using radar to pinpoint vessels. They're gathering active intelligence from radios and land-based informers. And they execute these precision strikes in fast motorized boats armed with modern assault rifles and specialized boarding gear. The crucial thing to understand here is that we're talking about highly organized, mostly land-based criminal syndicates. They aren't just aimlessly roaming the seas like the old days, they are executing highly calculated precision strikes.
And to really give you a sense of the massive scale and the urgent stakes here, just think about this number, 1,207. According to the International Maritime Organization, that is the total number of piracy and armed robbery attacks reported against ships just between 1984 and 1997. And honestly, that's probably just a fraction because so many incidents go totally unreported. Crews are taken hostage, people get hurt. The stakes for securing our bright, open oceans literally could not be higher.
Act 1. The jurisdictional maze. Now, to stop a highly organized threat, you need a highly organized legal system, right? And that's exactly where the puzzle begins. Because historically, the whole definition of piracy was chained to very specific geography. Back in the 1920s, the League of Nations restricted the definition strictly to acts happening on the high seas. Then, the 1932 Harvard Draft permitted some territorial seizures but kept that strong geographic tie. Even jumping way forward to 1982, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, we usually just call it UNCLOS, it still limited piracy to illegal acts strictly on the high seas.
And that strict geographical focus, it accidentally created a massive problem. See, UNCLOS essentially divided up the ocean. Out on the high seas, the open ocean, strict piracy laws apply, and basically any state can seize offenders. But then you have the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, which extends 200 nautical miles from a coast. Legally speaking, the status there is sui generis, which basically means it's unique and ambiguous. And because of that ambiguity, UNCLOS accidentally handed pirates a 200 nautical mile legal hiding place.
Carving up the map like that created this brilliant but super dangerous maze of loopholes for criminals to exploit. First off, coastal states pushed their territorial seas 12 nautical miles outward. Then you had archipelagic baselines. These allowed nations with a ton of islands, think Indonesia or the Philippines, to enclose vast areas of really vulnerable water under their own sovereignty, pulling them out of standard international piracy operations. Add in a 24 nautical mile contiguous zone that lacks clear hot pursuit provisions, plus that confusing 200 nautical mile EEZ we just talked about, and you have a total geographic nightmare. Violent acts were definitely happening, but they were rarely legally classed as piracy simply because of where they occurred on the map.
So it begs a pretty dramatic question, doesn't it? How exactly do you catch a pirate when they're hiding in a legal loophole? I mean, if they commit an act of terror just a few miles inside an invisible line in the ocean, how does the international community fight back?
Act 2. The Global Dragnet. Okay, so this is the thrilling turning point where the international community really banded together, and the solution they came up with was brilliant in its simplicity. Enter the 1988 Rome Convention, officially known as SUA. Instead of arguing about invisible lines on a map, SUA completely bypassed that entire geographic maze. It shifted the whole legal focus away from where the attack happened to the violent act itself. Under SUA, you don't even have to use the word piracy. It's incredibly straightforward. If a person seizes a ship by force or intimidation, if they perform acts of violence that endanger safe navigation, if they place devices likely to destroy a ship or destroy navigational facilities, or even just communicate false information to put a ship in danger, the international hammer comes down, period. And it applies to anyone attempting, abetting, or threatening these acts too.
But the real teeth of the Rome Convention, it's this ultimate mandate right here. Extradite or prosecute. It is an absolute, unconditional rule. If an alleged offender is found in any state party's territory, that nation must submit the case to its own authorities for prosecution without delay, or they have to extradite them to a state that will. There are literally no more safe havens.
Act 3. Closing the final loopholes.
Now, to make the Rome Convention actually work on the ground, individual nations had to upgrade their local laws to finalize the trap. Take India, for example. They're a perfect case study. Before 2012, the Indian Penal Code simply didn't address the specific offense of piracy. And this actually led to real-world problems trying to prosecute pirates who are already sitting in the custody of Indian police authorities. Can you imagine? So after signing the SUA Convention, India took decisive action. They drafted the Piracy Bill of 2012 specifically to fill this massive gap and build an airtight legal framework.
So the crucial point is how this domestic law basically weaponized the international treaty. Let's walk through the highly satisfying, actionable steps India took here. First, the 2012 bill legally extended their jurisdiction straight into that ambiguous 200 nautical mile EEZ, officially closing that UN-clause loophole. Second, it introduced a super powerful legal mechanism. If arms, ammunition, or evidence of a threat are recovered from the accused, the burden of proving innocence actively shifts right back to the accused. Finally, it empowered the government to set up designated courts to rapidly prosecute these offenders, completely regardless of their nationality. And they definitely backed it up with severe consequences. Under the 2012 bill, the primary punishment for piracy became imprisonment for life. Even attempting or abetting guarantees up to 14 years in prison, plus a hefty fine. And if an act of piracy results in the death of a person, the penalty can escalate all the way to the death penalty. The trap was officially sprung. One of the greatest threats to peaceful maritime navigation is piracy. The main purpose is to ensure that appropriate action is taken. We started with this chaotic ocean filled with loopholes and high-tech thieves. But through decades of evolving international and domestic law, the world built a web that leaves them absolutely no place to hide. So the next time you look out at the bright, vast expanse of the ocean, ask yourself, what other invisible legal dragnets are silently operating out there right now, keeping the modern world safe?